Y'all see that drum? Let's let the militarized police state know exactly how the fuck we feel about them. Good afternoon. My name is Leanne Fields Stewart. I use they, them, she, her pronouns, and I'm the founder of the Oprah Project. I call upon each and every one of you to make a commitment. Today, I urge you to commit that today is the very last day that transphobia will claim the lives, loves, and joys of Black trans people.
All oppression is connected. Stonewall was about rebelling against police brutality. We all have that in common. We have this arm of white supremacy that is up against us. Hi, my name is Diamond Stylz, and this is a word. Why violence against Black trans women is a civil rights issue. I am the culmination of red, velvety, country Mississippi women and a queer community of gay men and lesbians that showed me how to survive through scarcity, that showed me how to find the joy in all of this silly oppression. I was the first Black trans woman to attend Jackson State University in Mississippi, and they put me in a male's dorm. But what they didn't know is that they were exposing me to violence. People were trying to throw boiling water on me. Any place that I was trying to be a normal person, there was a risk of violence, risks of sexual assault, a risk of anything. We can't even get a break because every couple of weeks, one of our sisters are dying. The people who are killing us are the men who we are engaging with. Because we are Black trans women, we engage with Black men. Just like white trans women, they engage with white men. Because of our lack of economic, social mobility, we don't have certain protections to keep us safe as other girls. We don't have the resources to get the surgeries that makes us a little bit more passable. I think that every community has a level of transphobia in it. When it comes to Black men, it's so many levels to why men uphold patriarchy. And for me, I think we are just a casualty of that. They're scared, they're fearful, they're so policed in so many different ways that when they lash out, when they haven't worked through the trauma, when they haven't worked through their exploration, when they don't have anybody to talk about this without being judged, usually we are the ones who have to be the therapist, has to be the experimentation, have to be the person there who gets the negative. And sometimes when it's somebody who is traumatized and trying to deal with this stuff and explore these things, we're usually the casualty.
No justice! No peace! No justice! No peace!
At least with cis women, there is a buffer. They're not being saved. They're not being saved, but there is a moral buffer that says you are not supposed to beat your woman. But with a trans woman, that is taken away because you have chosen to totally denounce your malehood. Everything that comes to you, you deserve. It's so many Black trans women out here doing amazing work. So we have the amazing people on Pose, you know, the producers, the directors, the actors who are doing this image activism, allowing a trans character, a trans person to come into people's homes on television and connect to their stories. But then there's people on the ground with my organization, Black Trans Women's Inc. We're just creating programs to help more directly Black trans people. Recently, the NAACP voted and passed a resolution that said they want to make us a priority in protecting us. This is the NAACP. Now, have they rolled out any policies? I don't know, but they did take the step in publicly saying and voting and passing this resolution that said that they want to center Black trans folks. And I really appreciate that. I think it's a great direction to be going into. The resolution is to be more empathetic, understand the resource that you have in regards to what we can show you of how to get us off and under this oppression, and understand that the oppression that we are going through is connected to everything else. When we talk about decriminalizing sex work, when we're talking about poverty and housing, if you're centering us and you're building programs to solve those problems, I think we're an amazing resource, and I think they're sleeping on us.
Story time!
Story time!
Story time!
Story time!
Story time!
Story time!
True story!
True story!
The other day, I dreamt I was cuddling with a human-sized platypus. I stroked its beak and its tail, I wrapped my arms around it, and it made a sound I did not recognize. But that sound felt a lot like joy and calm and loyalty. I hear that's what some people call love. And maybe I didn't know what love sounded like until that moment, but that's not surprising to me. You know, survivors were like that. We're used to mistaking chaos for love. We've been trained to call our very realities things that they are not. So this clarity in my spirit was new. I woke up all rejuvenated. I wanted to know everything about the love of my dreams. So I read every encyclopedia entry, every Wikipedia article, listened to every TED Talk I could find about the platypus, but they all described it the same way. Said it had the bill of a duck and the tail of a beaver. That it was weird and strange, but how strange does that sound to the platypus? That you could be saying it as the tail of a creature it's never even shared a continent with? It's like if it has the bill of a platypus and the tail of a platypus and poison spurs in its feet like a platypus, it's probably not a duck. It's like calling a thing it is not. It's like when colonizers that called themselves scientists landed on what was once a black continent we now call Australia. You know, when they first saw the platypus, they thought it was a joke. Someone playing a trick. They thought someone actually wasted their time gluing bills onto the faces of rats. So they tried to remove the bill from the face of the platypus and subsequently killed a lot of platypuses that way, trying to uncover the joke. Turns out the joke was murder, because they were insistent on calling a thing it is not. It's like maybe my gender is a platypus. You know, people always trying to label parts of my body things that they are not. It's like when Columbus landed on Hispaniola, and Balboa landed in North America, and Hawkins landed in West Africa, and they saw all these black and brown bodies. They saw men and women, and they saw something else that they thought was a joke. They thought someone was playing a trick. They saw all these people that lay between their understandings of gender, and somehow, sometimes even beyond them. You know, some at the time called us healers. Some called us just purely divine. Now some of us just call it trans for short, but to them it was a joke. It was someone playing a trick. So maybe that's why. Maybe that's why they ordered us killed by dogs. Maybe that's why they burned us alive. Maybe that's why they tried to kill everyone that ever saw us as holy. Maybe that's the punchline, because the joke to white supremacy is always murder. It's like when they told us they were bringing us civility on black and brown soil, but what they meant was that they were bringing us the transatlantic slave trade, because they like to call a thing it is not. It's like maybe my name is a platypus. Because when I say it, people tell me that's not what it should be, when really my ancestors called for me and I responded back, and they told me there is nothing blacker than me calling my own name into existence. But to you, maybe it's a joke. And maybe that joke is suppression, because supremacy always tries to kill things it doesn't understand. You know, I hear abusers do that sometimes. Try to devalue things they don't understand and call things that they are not. So I may call that gaslighting. They may call it law and order. They may call it civility. They may call it a joke or a trick on them, a trick on their science, a trick on their biology, a trick on their legal system, a trick on their supremacy, a trick on their superiority. But there will always be the platypus. Even when you laugh behind its back, even when you deny its power, it has poison in every step it takes. Underwater, it senses electrical pulses to find its food and the things that it will prey on. It reminds me of myself and the ways that I sense bullshit and decide what kinds of energy I will or will not feed on. Even when you think I'm a joke, that my body is weird and strange, even when you call me a thing I am not, maybe I'm not a platypus, maybe I'm just defiant with venom in my walk, maybe it's just my familiar, maybe I'm just familiar with the ways white supremacy works, maybe my familiar teaches me to always call a thing exactly what it is, and I call you.
Hey guys, would you mind getting on the left side for me? I know, you're stuck with the cars. You're killing it, thank you.
My name is CJ, motherfucking Run, and I'm about to go do what the it is CJ Run does. Tell me what's the matter with being a faggot rapper if I'm already doing what you don't. Fuck your bros, fuck your pros. If you need me, you can find me in a league of my own, yeah. I've got the best kept secret. Put it in your pocket, promise that you'll never leak it. I swore not to repeat it. Take it from me, you don't have to believe it. Like you fucking leave, you should probably believe that. How could they compete with the body of an expat? Mind on a jetpack to infinity and beyond before I get back. You tell them bring your best work. I don't have the heart to be concerned with you brothers, so I'ma do my dance like my first name fella.
Mandla. That's a name and a power that I gave myself. I was named after a 16th century Irish saint, and I always knew it was some kind of mistake. During apartheid, the protesters would shout, "Amandla! Awetu!" Power. It's ours. Trust me when I say that being non-binary is not a result of assimilation to white culture. I am Zimbabwean and I am a gender. BC, before colonialism, our god was Maori. Maori was understood to be neither man or woman. Then Christianity came along and gendered Maori as a man. In my first language, Ndebele, the words for he and she do not exist. So when we talk about people, we just use their names, and I feel at home in my mother's tongue. Black lives matter. That has always included Black, trans, and non-binary people. We have lived for generations, eons. We have always been here. We have died. We have been killed before our time on earth is done. Too much. For too long. We are the androgynous divinities and creation myths that were pillaged and hidden, replaced with a male god who taught us not to dare question gender's norms. We were never taught of Nana Voluku, Mau, and Lisa, their gender-defying creation of the world. When we see mirrors of ourselves, it's too often in memory. We were told by our fathers that the truth of our existence is in direct conflict with our culture and heritage. We learn to hide the truth of who we are. We try too hard to fit the mold of the white man's God. which was not made with us in mind.
This is the first time I've actually been out and about since COVID-19. There's so many people who've risked catching COVID just to make a political statement. So as a black trans guy, I was slightly hesitant about bringing a trans sign into a black protest because you don't really know what the reaction would be. It can be quite dangerous. You don't really know the onslaught you're going to get. I've actually seen black trans life signs in the crowd, and that gives me a certain amount of comfort and pride. So having been part of the protest today, I would say that it's been incredibly emotional. And the reason being is that when you're part of two minority groups, you end up feeling the persecution of both demographics. I didn't think that it was possible for so many people of so many different nationalities to be so outspoken about black rights. I feel as if I've been heard.
It's your world, it's yours and yours and yours. It's your world. It's your world, it's yours and yours and yours. 'Cause in your world, you are truly free. Don't be scared of what you cannot see. Your only fear is possibility. Life owes us nothing, and we owe it everything. It's your world. It's your world. Your spirit's got to be free. It's your world. It's your world. It's your world.
Hey, queer Nigerians, hey, queer Africans.
Queer black people, we love you so much.
We love the rest
Queer
of you too.
trans people, we out here, we're existing, we're thriving.
Still
We're
alive.
trying at thriving, exactly. We're still surviving. And that's important, just to know that we're here. That's it, that's enough. Just being. How would you like to see our community grow?
I feel like the black community, the African community, are a community of immense faith, of numerous types. And we could be a little bit more creative and open-minded about the possibilities of humanity and challenge and interrogate more these limitations that have been put on people's existences. I found African communities to be violent, and we resort to violence quite quickly for a lot of things, whether that be in school, raising kids, or even interacting as adults sometimes. I saw a pastor slap somebody in church. I was like, oh.
On stage.
On stage. I was like,
and nobody said anything.
what would Jesus do? I don't know. At the very minimum of everything else. As a queer person, I don't even know that I care about people understanding. I don't necessarily know that I need to be understood
or like justified in my existence. But I do think that like we need to question why we think violence is an acceptable reaction to somebody's existence a lot more.
Mm-hmm. I think I would like to see our community grow in ways that are similar to, you know, ones that you have just mentioned, in that I think it's important for us to have what I would describe as like a collective acceptance of this work that we all need to do towards being softer in our interactions with each other as a wider like Black community, because that is what creates the access and like the network or the mesh that we need to thrive fully. Because if we are allowing people to just be within the depths and breadths and beauty and richness of, you know, our existence as Black people, I don't see how that's going to lead to anything but even more greatness for us, you know, being able to, exist in a way that's not monolithic, in a way that means that we don't have to be the same. There are things that we kind of, you know, have common grounds on, and i.e. our Blackness, but at the same time, I see and accept, not necessarily understand, I see or accept you for who you are. That doesn't infringe upon my existence, but, you know, we're existing together. Like that collective understanding, that like journey towards healing, that acknowledgement of the traumas that, you know, bring us to exist in the ways that we exist now. I think I would like to see that for us as Black people, that be a part of the language of conversation, like on a universal scale. I think that would be amazing. Yeah.
Identity. Can I go there? Like, I know this is a safe space. Moby and Laquan behind the camera and all that, but I feel compelled to really go there. And I have to say that I'm uneasy about it.
I was 16 when my mother asked me if I was a stud. Do I look like a fucking stud?
People often tend to invalidate my identity solely based on my queerness. Like, for instance, people will see me for my apparel, my makeup, my presentation, and for whatever reason, invalidate my Blackness as a result of it.
Identity seems to be the topic du jour, and in and increasingly out of queer spaces, I'm constantly asked how I identify. And if I'm honest, I identify as Black, I identify as queer, I identify as angry, and I identify as Catherine Hahn.
What happens when the fight is over? What happens when the fight is over and then you now know that I am trans? What happens then? What happens then? I still have the voice sometimes in my head, not sometimes, but I could call on that voice of my own father looking at me and saying, if I wasn't at my grandmother's house, he would be kicking and punching me right now when he found out that I liked women. Even then, there's that little slight wanting to protect your own people. And that's a conflict. That's an internal conflict, because you hate me, I want to protect you, but you try to kill me. So why? Why should I lay down? Why should I lay down my life? Why should I lay down my life? Why should I use my voice, my platform? Why? When you hate me. And if I go, and I can't even say, let me call on my trans brothers and sisters as well all the time, because it tends to be the same goddamn thing. If you're not poly, pansexual, if you're not gender fluid, you know, gender neutral, if you identify with the binary, I feel the ostracization even within that same community. I feel it like, you're too straight. I'm too straight. So it's this, you want war. Some of us just want fucking peace. Some of us will fight. You know, don't get it twisted, we'll fight. But, for fuck's sake, man. So that's just some of the thought process, and I am going to keep sitting down, and if I want to sit down and be bloody silent and observe, you call it being silent, I call it observing, I call it licking my wounds from the past fucking decade of you smashing my damn head in. That's what I call it. I call it trying to recover, and I call it going to therapy so I can be a productive person to myself, so I can live some semblance of feeling love and having a family. That's what I call it. You call it me sitting on my ass being silent. That's what I call it rejuvenation. So I know when the Black Lives Matter movement started, some of the conversation did start to come to surface, but I think it's diluted, because sometimes I assume that sometimes maybe there's a discomfort there as well. It's like, well, I don't know, man. People are really dying out here, and I mean, it's like, whose pain's more? We don't want to get into a competition of who's paying more. We also don't want to deflect from the situation. We don't want to deflect and say, no, we're not saying we don't want to fight for that. It's almost like it feels like a separate conversation, but in the recruiting, in the process of attempting to recruit people from an ostracized community, it's kind of like, well, I don't know, you're the same people that try to kill us, why would we come with you? It's kind of that dance, like, it's almost like you have to convince us to come and join. So I don't know, I don't know. It's a bit hit or miss. I know if it boiled down to it, a lot of us will definitely be on the front line if it boiled down to it, and then deal with the conversation of, do you like us at the end of it? Because right now this takes precedence. But it's just I think it hits a certain way when I hear narratives that, oh, you're being silent, you're not using your platform, yada yada yada, and you're looking to the same people that I guess the same bunch of people you keep taking, and that can be a painful experience, and sometimes we just need a hug as well. So yeah.
I have decided. I'm going to put these words together because these words don't go together in this world. Words are powerful. They make a space both inside and outside of us. So I'm going to make a space for us. Trans magical. Trans eternal. Trans wonderful. Trans precious. Trans beautiful. Trans sacred. Trans profound. Trans unique. Trans incredible. Trans sexy. Trans wonder. Trans awe. Trans future. Trans strength. Trans courage. Trans resilience, trans amazing, trans joy, trans dignity, trans elegance, trans integrity. I'm going to make a space for me.
Lucy Hicks Anderson was one of the most well-known women in Ventura County during Prohibition. She hosted famously elaborate parties for the richest folks in town, while just across the tracks, she ran a boarding house that provided both liquor and women. And when the people of Ventura found out that she was a trans woman, they challenged her marriage, and she became the first trans person in history to go to court to fight for it. In the small town of Waddy, Kentucky, the Lawsons brought their child to a local doctor. They had a unique situation on their hands. In 1886, Mrs. Lawson had given birth to a baby boy. However, their child soon informed them that she was not a boy, that her name was Lucy, and that she would be wearing a dress to school. Thank you very much. And in a time when this was almost unheard of, the doctor encouraged them to accept Lucy for who she was and raise her as a girl. Lucy left school at 15 and supported herself as a domestic worker. She headed west at age 20 and married her first husband at age 34 to become Mrs. Lucy Hicks. The newlyweds settled in Oxnard, California, a booming farm community in Ventura County, 60 miles north of Los Angeles. Lucy did well for herself in Oxnard, working as a nanny and a cook for wealthy families and catering elaborate parties for the town's elites. She was successful, well-connected, and not afraid to skirt the law. While she was winning contests for her dinner rolls and fruitcakes, she was also running a boarding house as a brothel and selling illegal liquor. These were Prohibition days, mind you. She was arrested twice in the 1920s for possession of intoxicating liquor, but used her social connections to avoid any serious consequences. Once a wealthy banker even bailed her out just so she could still cater his dinner party that evening. Lucy continued to work both uptown and underground until 1945. By this time, she was 59 years old and a fixture in the community. She had recently married her second husband, Reuben Anderson, a retired soldier. When the Navy tracked cases of venereal disease back to Lucy's boarding house, the doctor who examined all of Lucy's girls insisted on examining Lucy as well. That examination revealed her gender history and put her at the center of a scandal that rocked Ventura County. Lucy was charged with falsifying marriage documents and defrauding the government by claiming her husband's GI benefits. The court argued that she wasn't legally married to her husband because in their eyes, she was a man. And of course, marriage was between a man and a woman. Lucy stood her ground and argued that her lived identity was more valid than what was printed on her birth certificate. She said, "I defy any doctor in the world to prove that I am not a woman. I have dressed and acted as just what I am, a woman." Despite Lucy's defiant declaration to the world, the jury found her guilty of impersonation and fraud. Her marriage was declared null and void, and in addition to serving time, she was also sentenced to 10 years probation. What's more, the courts forbid her from wearing women's clothing. She and Reuben served their time and eventually settled in Los Angeles, living quietly out of the public eye. Trans people today are still fighting for the right to survive and be who they are. So when same-sex couples cut their wedding cakes today, may they think of the struggle that still continues and raise a toast to Lucy Hicks Anderson. Lucy's story is just one of the many untold histories of trans pioneers who have lived, loved, and died in this country. We have truly been around.
This is a movement rooted in joy. Do you believe in the power of trans lives?
Black trans women must be trusted to lead.
We demand a world where trans people are never forced to leave our homes, where indigenous cultural practices, land and body sovereignty are respected.
We envision a world where all trans people are affirmed from the moment of their birth.
A world where the healthcare we need is readily available.
All trans people deserve a long and fulfilling life.
Trans people deserve the freedom to thrive. We demand a world without cages.
These pillars are just the beginning of our demands. We invite you to do more than just ask what you can do for trans lives. Act and join us by signing on to the Trans Agenda for Liberation.
The night has come, and the land is dark, and the moon is the only light we'll see. No, I won't be afraid. No, I won't be afraid. Just as long as you stand by me. So darling, darling, stand by me. Oh, stand by me. Oh, stand by me.